Newman, Paul. Over 600 million was donated by him. He established a camp where terminally ill kids could have free horseback rides. In one sense, he was the most giving American of the 20th century in terms of music. What caused Paul Newman's daughters to file a lawsuit against the organization bearing his name? Along with a memoir he never wanted to be published, the solution can be found in the music estate he left behind. He had been silent about his kid for 30 years, and his wife had confessed to him about the only serenity he had ever known. This is the entire tale. He believed he had deleted the 14,000 pages. At the age of 61, Paul Newman made the decision to fully comprehend himself for the first time in 1986. He looked to his close buddy Stuart Stern, the scriptwriter of music, rebel without a cause, one of the individuals he trusted the most to accomplish that. Newman proposed an unconventional concept. Stern would speak with those who knew Newman the best and record lengthy, in-depth interviews with him. This includes his spouse, kids, childhood pals, friends from the Navy, directors, and co-stars. However, Newman was clear from the start about one thing. Everyone had to be really truthful. No pretending, no distorting the facts, and no defending anyone's reputation. The project ran from 1986 to 1991, a span of 5 years. Stern conducted interviews with a remarkable variety of individuals from Newman's life and profession at that period, in addition to Newman himself. Directors like Elliot Kazan, George Roy Hill, Martin Ritt, and John Huston were among them. A young Tom Cruise and Karl Malden were among the actors that participated. As the talks continued, hundreds of hours of recordings accumulated, all of which were meticulously converted into transcripts. Those interviews ultimately occupied thousands of pages. Then something altered. Newman eventually left the project. Perhaps he became disinterested. Perhaps he lost his bravery. Perhaps he believed he had already found what he was looking for. He never finished the book. For whatever reason, he set fire to the tapes later in the 1990s. The fact that the transcripts had survived was something he either didn't know or didn't think about. They were packed up, abandoned, and forgotten. Stuart Stern passed away in 2015 before the project was ever published. On September 26, 2008, Newman passed away at home in Westport at the age of 83 from lung cancer. And that appeared to be the last of it for a while. The narrative then resumed. Working on a documentary about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, Emily W. Tell started looking into storage. The 14,000 pages of lost transcripts were discovered there. That discovery presented a serious ethical dilemma for Newman's daughters. After making a vow of complete honesty under music, their father reportedly attempted music to remove the record. Did they, therefore, have the authority to utter those words? You couldn't ask him. Furthermore, the content was not a completed document. It was a vast, amorphous jumble of memories, voices, and unpleasant realities. A portion of the information it disclosed about the family had never even been discussed openly inside the family. Nevertheless, the daughters read it, discussed their options, and ultimately made a choice. They thought it was important to hear what their father had said about himself and what other people had said about him. The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man, edited by David Rosenthal and released by Knopf on October 18, 2022, was the result of that choice, 14 years following Newman's passing. It doesn't feel like a typical memoir. Rather, it turns out to be something much more unique and potent. Drawing from those 14,000 pages, it offers a chronological oral history composed of numerous voices. Newman narrates his story, but the others who lived next to him continuously add to, refute, and enhance his version. The foreword was written by his daughter Melissa, while the afterword was written by his daughter Clea. Concurrently, the same content served as the inspiration for Ethan Hawke's 6-part documentary series, The Last Movie Stars, which debuted music on HBO Max in July 2022. In that series, actors read the transcripts aloud, with Laura Linney as Joanne Woodward and George Clooney as Newman. The world believed it knew Paul Newman for many years. The coolest man alive was him. He was the hustler, the racing car driver, the philanthropist, the endearing outlaw in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the unstoppable rebel in Cool Hand Luke, and the well-known face on a bottle of salad dressing. However, the person that emerged from those boxes was much more complex, wounded, and human. The dining room wall that wept. The first shock comes almost immediately, and it has nothing to do with fame or movies. Rather, it originates from a difficult-to-forget recollection and a family house in Shaker Heights, Ohio. Paul and Arthur, his older brother, were two little boys who used to slam their heads on the wall of the dining room. They didn't take it lightly. According to Newman, they struck the wall so forcefully that eventually the plaster behind the covering came off. They continued doing it covertly until the harm was too great to conceal. Newman later referred to the damaged location as their personal wailing wall in one of the memoir's most eerie passages. He went on to explain why. He claimed that there was no one his own size to vent the anger he had inside music. He then displayed it on the wall. Almost everything that follows is infused with that wrath. Arthur Sr., his father, stood in the middle of it. He operated a prosperous sporting goods store, but according to Newman, he was an aloof, resentful drinker whose sarcasm did not allow for affection. Paul felt throughout his life that his father never once gave him a sense of worth. Tress, his mother, had a different influence on him. She was fascinated by his appearance and kept staring at it. However, Newman thought she didn't see much more. He consequently carried a painful belief for the most of his life. He felt that no amount of accomplishment ever went far enough to change his father's belief that he was a failure when he passed away. These pages are so remarkable because of that. Newman music appeared to exude confidence on screen. He appeared composed, powerful, and confident. The smile, ease, and cool control were adored by the audience. However, Newman himself claimed that there was a guy founded on shame underneath that persona. Swagger was observed by the public. The transcripts show how much suffering was going on beneath it. He never discovered another piece. The second disclosure is arguably more devastating, in part because Newman chose to make it despite being well aware of the potential harm to his reputation. He was a severe alcoholic for a large portion of his adult life. It's difficult to comprehend the extent of his drinking. Newman talked about drinking in quantities that would be too much for most people to handle. Beer was served by the case, followed by strong liquor. He drank through big movies, big hits, and big life turning points. However, Newman does not say the most hurtful thing about this topic. It originates from Joanne Woodward, an Oscar-winning actress who has been his wife for 50 years. Reflecting on her husband's inner life, she claimed that the only serenity she thought Paul ever experienced was when he was completely inebriated. Your perception of him is altered by just one sentence. His father had also struggled with alcoholism. Newman was aware of this history, and he feared with terrible accuracy that he had given his son, the movie star who didn't think he could act, the same weakness in music. Then comes another surprise, which might be the most bizarre of all for a lot of readers. Paul Newman didn't think he was very gifted. He thought he was attractive. Throughout the memoir, that belief keeps coming up. Newman was admitted to the renowned New York Actors Studio, which shaped performers like James Dean and Marlon Brando. He never really thought he belonged there, though. The other performers must have been wondering how someone like him had gotten admitted, he wrote. The answer, in his opinion, had little to do with skill. He believed his face had caused the panel to react. As a result, he developed a very particular perspective on his own acting. Because he lacked the innate strength he loved in Brando, he felt that he constructed performances from the outside in, depending on diligence, skill, and control. He continued to be extremely self-conscious about being appreciated for his appearance. He detested the constant focus on his stunning blue eyes. In private, he frequently thought of himself as a fraud. His career record reveals a completely different picture. In 5 different decades, Newman was nominated for an Academy Award. He received nominations for The Hustler, HUD, Cool Hand Luke, Absence of Malice, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and The Verdict. He continued to lose for years. Finally, in 1987, he received an Oscar for Best Actor for The Color of Money. His relationship with success was still difficult even at that point.